Welcome all to the next episode in my Dark Aspects of Mother series, and the second video comparing the English localization of EarthBound to its original Japanese release, Mother 2. If you haven't seen the previous episode yet, diving into the game's depictions of violence, I recommend watching that first. For everyone else though, make sure to grab a Hawkeye from the Scaraba Pyramid gift shop so we can delve a little deeper into the darkness. Part 2, Death and Demons. It's now time to get a little more macabre, as today I'm going to be exploring all references to dying, death, and demons in the world of Mother 2, and explain how much of that was retained in the English release. Early on in the game, we're introduced to Buzz, the bee that's not a bee, sent from the future to warn Ness of a timeline in which Giygas succeeds in plunging all into the darkness of hell, rephrased as eternal darkness for EarthBound. Despite his appearance, the flying insect is actually very adept in Psi, protecting the party from this Starman Jr., a hired assassin sent by Giygas. But while Buzz survives this attempt on his life, imminent demise is inevitable when Pokey's mom, Lardna, mistakes him for a toilet fly or a dung beetle. "Die and go to hell," she screams in Mother 2 as she smashes his guts out. In EarthBound, any reference to his dying is replaced with euphemisms like passing on, but nevertheless he leaves this world, existing now as just another memory in Ness's mind. Which is a place in the game we're actually able to visit. Buzz's tombstone can be spotted later in Magicant, a realm created inside Ness's head that he's able to access after standing in each of the 8 power spots of the Earth. Everything we see here is a reflection of Ness's own past memories and self, which is why it looks so different to the Magicant explored in Mother 1. According to series creator Shigesato Itoi, everyone has their own Magicant. Ness's just happens to be especially scary. Itoi then admits that perhaps that's what it's like inside his own head. Quote, I'm a pretty cheerful guy myself on the outside, but who knows what I'm like on the inside. Unquote. So just how messed up is Ness's Magicant exactly? Honestly, not very. At least when compared to the likes of the Place of Emptiness, Mu, Moonside, and even Threed, which we'll get to in a bit. But there are some unsettling occurrences to find here. In general, the dramatic shifts in color are very surreal, with an overall geometry consisting of abstract shapes and objects. There's talking snowmen who have long since melted away in reality, but thrive in Ness's subconscious. We can also speak with a younger version of Ness we no longer have time to play with, secondary antagonist Pokey in a more vulnerable state of mind, and a handful of defeated enemies, expressing the pain they still feel from Ness wounding them, likely representing a sort of repressed guilt. Things start to get more dangerous when venturing deeper into Ness's headspace, but thankfully assistance is available in the form of these flying men. These bird-like creatures representing our protagonist's courage, returning from Mother 1. They are optional but can be recruited at any time to fight alongside Ness in battle, with the morally gray catch that once they perish in combat, they can't be revived. There are 5 flying men in total, all optimistic and eager in aiding Ness on his quest, at first. When their numbers start dwindling, the flying men will warn Ness, and by extension the player, to be more careful, telling him not to treat their kind like trash. When there's just one remaining, he'll scold Ness, telling him that what he's doing isn't courageous, it's desperation. The first 2 gravestones properly honor the felled flying men buried there, but the last 3 feature lazier and lazier inscriptions, to the point where the final tombstone simply reads, Tombstone. It's a different approach to the remorse Nintendo so clearly felt for all who were lost in EarthBound Beginnings. But this is effective in another way. It's sad to imagine Ness having an increasingly difficult time remembering the flying men individually, and the importance of their sacrifice as they die out one by one. Buzz and the flying men, then, are the only cases in which a character indisputably dies on screen. Any other instance is merely implied. Such is the case with Everdred, the crime boss I mentioned in the last video, who also has a place in Ness's memory. Well before his final appearance, but after he sends the kids off with a stack of cash as repentance, he's seen keeled over in a back alley of Fourside, surrounded by a crowd of concerned civilians. They all comment on him as if he's about to die, which seems to be confirmed when he recites what's known in Japanese culture as a death poem. Everyone is mortified then, stepping aside in shock when he simply gets up and walks away following his speech. Fun fact, this sequence actually left the biggest impression on Nintendo legend Shigeru Miyamoto when he played through Mother 2. He claimed in an interview that the NPC reactions in this scene felt very natural, and he praised the game's obvious expressiveness. It's hinted that Everdred staggered away to die off screen, but in both versions it's left vague as to whether or not he actually did. There's a couple of townsfolk in Tucson that will gossip about what happened to him, but their dialogue doesn't exactly clear things up. In Mother 2, one of the two colorfully reassures us that even if he is dead, he'll always be watching over us from hell. Everdred does have an unused ghost sprite found within the game's data, so if you aren't convinced he was a planned 5th party member at one point, this sprite could support those in favor of his grim fate. Staying in Fourside but shuffling over to the Monotoli building, we learn that the sneaky and selfish Pokey actually selflessly gave a gift to his maid, Electra, and that's selflessly with an asterisk, as unsurprisingly, this exchange wasn't entirely innocent. In Mother 2, she explains that when Pokey handed it over, he said, Meido no Miyage, which, according to Clyde Mandelin's Legends of Localization Book, can potentially mean a gift for a maid, but is also an old phrase, meaning something like, this will be a good memory for when you die and go to hell. Electra recognizes this double interpretation and shrugs it off as a joke, mixing Japanese proverbs with English. It's a dark joke for sure, that was unfortunately but understandably lost in EarthBound's localization, as was any mention of hell, if you couldn't already tell. Slumping over to the department store with Jeff's soul in tow, one of Giygas' lackeys suddenly abducts Paula and seizes control of the building. In Mother 2, this alien tells the boys to die and go to hell. No, go to heaven. Even though this same line in EarthBound was censored to remove the mention, I personally prefer the phrasing, you will be gone and you'll be burning in, well, you'll go to heaven. That makes it a bit more obvious to me that this creature realizes its enemies are the good guys midway through the conversation. One example of this type of censorship not working, however, is a happiest cultist that tells Ness there's no salvation for non-believers, go to hell. In EarthBound, like Eternal Darkness but less cool, the cultist's threat was replaced with to eternity with you. There is a separate cultist who tells Ness don't go to heaven as a roundabout way of saying go to hell, but this interestingly is not a case of censorship. The line is exactly the same between both versions. Taking a Greyhound bus back to Onett, the town's hospital is named Yabu in Mother 2, which is the Japanese word for bush, but is also slang for quack doctor, implying that all the staff inside are frauds. The name was translated literally in EarthBound, so the initial joke was lost. But this is a prime example of why I love the writing of the Mother series. A particular name or line of dialogue may seem nonsensical, but Itoi is known to be careful with his words, so it likely has some sort of greater purpose. That joke is innocent on its own, but things get morbid, with one sign inside reading, Tombstone Blowout Sale. We have a special discount for those who have passed on in this hospital. What would you like written on your tombstone? Onett Hospital Surgery Team. The line was very similar in Mother 2, but has actually been revised in every Japanese re-release of the game. Clyde, or Mado, suggests that this text was either a problem for Japan's new rating board, the Computer Entertainment Rating Organization, SARO, at the time of the Mother 1+2 port, or that Itoi himself thought the humor was in poor taste. In the last video, I mentioned Mother 2's Many Many Devil boss becoming the evil Many Many for EarthBound, but there are a few other instances of the word devil in the script being changed because the localization team was made to remove them. In Mother 2, Fourside's mayor, Monotoli, suddenly rose to power by deliberately making a deal with the devil. In EarthBound, he instead supposedly made an exchange with a pure evil entity. Strangely enough, in the case of enemy names, demon seems to be a suitable replacement for devil. The Hermit Devil, for example, became the Squatter Demon, while the Devil Rafflesia was changed to Demonic Petunia. Then there's Devil Kiss, and its stronger variant, Deep Devil Kiss, changed into Kiss of Death and French Kiss of Death respectively. I think the localization choice was really clever, but isn't it at least a little suggestive to have a big pair of lips with this naming scheme? One apparent exception to this accepted use of demon, though, is the Magicant boss Ness's Demon, having been changed to Ness's Nightmare. This censorship is all the more surprising when considering one glaring mention of devil that remained untouched in English, the all-important Devil Machine containing Giygas himself. We're getting ahead of ourselves though, so backtracking to the not quite as scary Threed, acting as an equivalent to the original Mother's town of Halloween, we have a literal ghost town filled with ghouls, ghasts, and goons alike. There's zombies called zombies, and ghosts called zombies for some reason, featuring horrifying artwork from the official manuals. The color palette of this haunted circus town incorporates dark purples and greens paired with vivid shades of pinks and reds. Like Happy Happy Village, it works to paint a grim atmosphere, escalated when Ness and Paula find themselves captured, knocked unconscious, and imprisoned beneath the graveyard. How did they find themselves in this predicament? Well, after having their souls stared into by a pair of zombies, a scantily clad woman being ogled by a local can be found loitering outside Threed's hotel. When followed inside, the music becomes distorted, and this apparent lady of the night leads the kids into an upstairs bedroom where they're ambushed by these creatures of the night. It's an odd and slightly provocative sequence, but it serves as the perfect segue into Dark Aspects of EarthBound's finale, where I'll look at the more sensual themes this game snuck in, before confronting the violent, fearful, and sexual inspiration behind Giygas, as one of the darkest villains from Nintendo's history. Thank you all, and I'll see you then.